The SAGES planning project culminated in June of 2023, and this report reflects the work that this grant made possible. The project, which began in February, ran for 5 months and was done to further the mission of building community among elder women and working to amplify their voices. So, what has changed? Well, my perspective, my resolve, and my involvement with this population, specifically at the Menasha Senior Center. My original thought and perspective was that this population of women would be bursting to tell their stories. And I believe this because I know how much depth and how much richness they carry. But what I learned in the process is that it takes time to build the kind of trust necessary for folks to feel comfortable sharing parts of themselves and their lives. And with this population in particular, they weren't used to being asked about their lives. Having spent the majority of their lives serving others, it just didn't occur to them that they had stories that were worthy of being shared. They imagined the only stories worth telling were extraordinary or otherwise newsworthy. My challenge continues to be shining a light on how important these women's stories are and drawing them out of their shells to share them. So my mission continues to be pushing to share their herstory because it's extraordinary. And how did it go? Well, many rich relationships were fostered throughout the project. At the Menasha Senior Center, I became acquainted with and worked with Chloe Hanson-Dunn and Leah McCormick, as well as several volunteers to schedule times to work with participants. And a really nice foundation was laid for future collaborations. I regularly attended Breakfast for Your Brain, which is a program that I founded back in 2014. And I worked with both Chloe and Leah to help build rich and trusting relationships with about 10 of those participants. Additionally, I began instructing Ageless Grace classes, which is a seated movement class designed to be developmental, preventative, and restorative for both the body and the brain. And I created and then facilitated an initial story circle in the months of April and May. And the culmination of the project was to be a pilot episode of a podcast series to be titled Sages, which would highlight the stories of these elder women. A copy of this audio is attached to the end of this video. Who was positively impacted and how do I know? Well, what became understood during the execution of the planning grant was that yes, a pilot episode for Sages would be produced. But what it revealed was that the end product, the podcast, wasn't the masterpiece. The masterpiece was the story circle. We quickly realized that the group was making a difference in the lives of people who came and listened and shared so openly. The feeling of discovery, a sense of community, it was palpable, and the participants continued to become more and more open in their participation and in their writing. And it became obvious that there was momentum for the circle and that there was great potential for growth. What am I proud of? Number of things. One, I was able to partner and produce an episode of Project I'm Speaking with the Fox Cities Performing Arts Center with a storyteller named Kelly Swanson. Also during this time, I was able to compete and win a title as a storyteller myself at the Women's Storytelling Festival in Fairfax, Virginia. And as a result of that, I'm continuing to build relationships nationwide in the storytelling community with professional tellers, as well as organizations like the Story Circle Network, which highlights and encourages the stories of elder women, and the Healing Story Alliance. With regard to the podcast, I'm proud that I was able to interview a wide variety of women for the Project I'm Speaking series, and that I've been able to hone my skills as a producer and have been able to continue to elevate the voices of creative women. The work just feels really important. What would I do differently in the future? I would release expectations a little more readily and trust the process a bit more. I went in with a very specific vision and with some pretty stringent ideas of how things would play out. And I placed a lot of pressure on myself in the process, but eventually relaxed into how things began to develop organically. All of the funds were spent throughout the grant to compensate the time it took to plan, facilitate, and produce this work. Additionally, Katie Chiquette from Storycatchers was brought on and compensated as a partner in a story-making workshop called Women of Wisdom with Stories to Tell at the Menasha Library. Moving forward, a story circle has been funded and planned through the end of the year, and compilation episodes containing stories from the Sages are planned for the upcoming Full Spiral season. These women were the nurturers of family, of homes, relationships, and communities, and their stories matter. And these women, each with unique experiences and inner lives, deserve a space to share and be seen. Thank you so much.